to It Matters Radio and Walking on the Weene Side. And today we're talking about one of my, most greatest concerns as a professional when I was in practice as a psychologist, which is addictions. And we're talking with Koorosh Rassekh, who is an addiction therapist and founder of a program called Evo in California that deals with health and wellness. And he recently wrote a very interesting blog about 5 myths about rehab. And I read it and thought, well, gee, this is worth talking about. So thanks for joining us today, Koorosh. Why don't we just start right out with talking about what is addiction and what is rehab? Because those are words we all use, but not everybody really knows the meanings of.
Good morning, and thanks for having me on your radio show. But those are big questions to start with, so let's just jump right in. And I'm not sure if there's a single answer to those, so I'll answer those from my perspective, which is a little bit different than what I'll refer to today as the business of addiction might define it. I think of addiction as a reasonable, necessary response to a certain set of stressors in somebody's life that then in and of itself gets out of control. Mm-hmm. So I'm having a struggle, whatever that struggle might be, usually some combination of things, and I gain a benefit, some sort of a relief from using a substance or engaging in a particular behavior, or some sort of a gain from that same substance use or behavior. And so then I begin to employ that as a way of getting along in life, getting my goals, getting away from things that are really difficult. The problem over time becomes that those original problems are not attended to. Mm-hmm. They're not resolved. And the behaviors can become their own secondary problem. Mm-hmm. Now I'm using substances and so I'm intoxicated. And that intoxication has a physiological effect. And then the recovery, and now I need more because of tolerance and those kinds of things. So addiction, to me, is struggle over a long period of time that's attended to a particular way, and now that self-care mechanism in and of itself becomes a problem.
Now, you're not saying, are you, that there is not a biological factor in here, that, for example, people don't inherit a propensity for alcoholism, that their body responses aren't?
I definitely think biological factors play an important role. I can't, to the best of my knowledge, I haven't seen anything that definitively says, if this, then that. Certainly there are risk factors, and then there are resiliency factors. Mm-hmm. For example, there's a particular gene, and I really do have to memorize what this gene is, because I refer to it, and then I think, why don't I know this? That makes it really, really difficult to tolerate bitterness. It's mm-hmm. just a genetic thing. Mm-hmm. And if you have that, you're likely going to be more resilient against alcoholism. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. That make you, doesn't protect you from all addictions, mm-hmm. but it certainly does protect you from this one particular one. Now, does that mean that you cannot develop alcoholism if you mm-hmm. have that gene? Mm-hmm. No, that's not true either. Mm-hmm. So there are resiliency factors and risk factors that are genetic, mm-hmm. they are learned, they have to do with specific traumas, they have to do with marginalization, they have to do with resources, mm-hmm. And then these are all sort of like puzzle pieces in a person's life.
Okay. And so what you're saying is that the path to, say, alcoholism or any addiction is it may or may not have some physiological parts to what helps it go along, and familial role modeling and things like that. But mostly what's behind it is somebody is trying to find a way to deal with real life and or psychological stressors that they have to, and they're looking for a way to make it viable to live, in a sense. And so they find a behavior, a substance, even a social group, because you can become addicted to a kind of a group behavioral kind of thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We hear this. It's in the vernacular. I'm addicted to yoga. Mm-hmm. That's usually met with, that's fantastic, right? And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I'm not suggesting that it is. But that's a person telling us that they rely on this thing, this activity, in a meaningful way to help them in their life. And that's fantastic. There are certainly addictions that will have less of a negative impact on your life than others.
Yeah, but by its very use of the word, addiction implies that the person has reached a point where it is negative.
That's right. Yeah. I do agree with that. I do think
even if it's on something positive like yoga, at a certain point, we wouldn't say a person was addicted to yoga unless it meant that they weren't getting their work done, or that they weren't able to have a relationship, or something.
They're spending money they don't have. Right. Their body is breaking down. Right. Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly right. I think that's an important distinction to make.
Okay. And now, what about rehab? What is rehab?
So again, this whole piece is about the myths of rehab. So, if I were to answer what is rehab, and I'm referring to what's happening out there in the lion's share of what rehab is. Right. There are different approaches to teaching somebody how to become abstinent from a particular behavior. Mm-hmm. As long as that behavior continues to be judged moralistically. If the behavior is more socially acceptable than treatment, and it's interesting that we differentiate between rehab and treatment. Treatment becomes about helping people figure out what's going on and develop more reasonable relationships. So if I go in and I've got a drinking problem, most treatment for that, most rehab is focused on teaching sobriety.
Right, to not drink.
Modern treatment will also be concerned with dual diagnosis or other underlying diagnosable conditions. Even more modern ones might also take into account the person and their experiences, etc., but all in service of that single outcome of sobriety. If you go in and you call yourself a workaholic, certainly you're not going to be met with the same opening line. As soon as you admit that you are at work and admit that you can never go back to work, we can begin the work, right? Which still exists, whether it's 12-step or non-12-step treatment for substances. That's still the message.
Right.
For alcoholism, it becomes more about, what's driving that?
Well, that's like the yoga. We're not going to tell the person who's addicted to yoga to give away your mats and never go to the yoga studio again. What we're going to say is try and figure out why you're overdoing it, try and figure out how much you should be doing it, and try and find a reasonable method of doing it.
Right. So that's exactly right. And that is the lion's share, the great majority of treatment for addiction. And from Evo's perspective, from my perspective, none of that really makes any sense, because we began our conversation in agreement, and I think that there is consensus across addiction treatment, psychology, psychiatry, medical, and the general population that the set of conditions that are present for somebody who then develops addiction have to do with either traumas or marginalization, those very things we just spoke about. So learned behavior, genetic risk factors, all of these other things. But all of what we just spoke about all of the outcomes had to do with the actual behavior. And that doesn't make any sense to us. Alcoholism isn't about alcohol. Alcoholism is about those conditions that existed that developed into alcoholism. So outcomes related to substances don't make any sense to us. Certainly you have to attend to that coping strategy in terms of what does it mean in your body right now? What do you need medically, particularly with alcohol? There's a threat to your life. We certainly need to address that. There are patterns of behavior. It's really great to break down and to get a sense of what those patterns are, what to expect, how do we want to move away from those habits and into other habits that people can identify as what they would prefer. But at the end of the day, the treatment is really rooted on what is it that the alcohol did for you? What was it that made it hard to be without the alcohol? So that's really where our outcomes are.
We're going to take a quick break here, folks, and we're going to come back and talk some more about addiction. So stay with us and Walking on the Weene Side.
How has sobriety changed your 40s?
It's taken the anxiety and depression and made it better. Because there was a period when I drank like a crazy person just to feel normal.
Were you an addict?
Define addict.
How would you define it?
I had this comprehensive inability to drink in moderation. Like I would go out with friends being like, okay, you know what normal people do? Normal people go out and they sit in a cafe and they have a beer.
Right.
And that was my intention. I'd want to sit in the cafe, have a beer and be normal. Fast forward 8 hours, I've had 15 drinks. There are 20 strangers in my apartment. There are people smoking crack in my bathroom. So I guess if that's
a moment, right? When you go into your bathroom or your house and you go, what happened to my life?
Well, you look at and you're like, who are you? Why are you smoking crack in my bathroom at 6:30 in the morning?
Did you ask for a hit?
What's that?
Did you ask for a hit?
Not at that time. No, I was, because it was late. I was like 6:30. Like I got to be at sleep by like 9 in the morning. I can't be smoking crack at 6:30 in the morning.
But you waited, right? I mean, your real jump into drugs and alcohol came later in your life?
Early and then later. I started doing drugs when I was 10. I know,
We can largely agree that's
okay.
too early for anybody.
Yeah, that was too early, and I did drugs because I wanted to hang out with the cool kids. But then I was 13 or 14, and I stopped doing drugs, and had about 5 years of sobriety. Yeah, my first sobriety date was 13. That's early. And then stopped drinking, and then now hopefully I'm just done forever.
Dude, that's got to come from more than just wanting to hang out with the cool kids.
Oh, later it came because alcohol is so amazing.
Yeah, but when you're 10, 11, and 12, I mean, there's got to be shit going on in your home. I mean, how would you define your relationship with your mother?
Well, at the time, the way I was able to do drugs at 10 is I was stealing drugs from my mom and her boyfriends.
Hard drugs?
But not that hard. Like, or a friend.
At 10, anything's a hard drug, right?
But also, and this was really wise. A friend of mine had a sister who was in a psych ward, and he would go visit her in the psych ward, and she would give him pills that she had been given, and we would just take them arbitrarily, like drink vodka and take pills that. So like these are probably like severe antipsychotic drugs, but we were like 11 years old thinking that might be fun to take antipsychotic drugs and drink rot gut vodka.
I'm not your therapist, Moby, and I know I'm not your doctor, but could some of the wiring in your brain today be directly related to what you're 10, 11?
Absolutely not. I am so healthy and well-adjusted. Yeah.
So that's a yes.
Yeah, I think that taking antipsychotic drugs arbitrarily when you're 11 years old can't have any...
You applaud, but I'm trying to stage an intervention here. No, you clearly have.
You're not my nurse.
You figured. I'm not your nurse. No. You've clearly figured it out. Did you ever come to ever have to have conversations with your mother in later years, addressing this part of your life?
No. Strangely enough, we didn't talk about much. That would have been a good thing to talk about.
Welcome back to Walking on the Weene Side. Koorosh, we were talking about the goals of treatment, and I got the feeling that one of the big differences between you and maybe other people, other programs, is not just simply that you're saying, hey, it's not enough to just look at that, at behavior as the metric, that we have to look at understanding and go. But it also, there's another implication to it, which is that the therapist is not the one necessarily setting the goals and giving the answers, because the client has to decide what their goal is. For going back with our yoga addict, that person still has to decide, what it is that is good for them and good for their body, not some external therapist armed with a diagnostic and statistical manual.
Absolutely. I think that is critical, and also allows room for the inevitable changes that come with a person and their preferences and their wants and their goals. And there is such a rich story to be had that we don't get to have if we meet people with our predetermined decisions around what they ought to really do. Mm-hmm. So whether it's yoga and somebody who wants to go back to it, or somebody who would like to drink moderately, there's a really important conversation that comes with that. What is that idea of drinking moderately? Where did that idea come from? And what will it mean if you arrive at that? Rather than, well, I don't know if you can do that, or let me teach you how to do that. Both of those end the conversation and shift into this other helping, teaching role, versus that curious stance that says, okay, well, what do you mean when you say that? One of the common things that I hear is, well, I'd like to be able to drink wine with dinner, right? A glass of wine with dinner. Well, there's a really rich conversation there. What is that? Where did that idea come from? And what will it mean to you if you have a glass of wine with dinner? And what we get are these wonderful opportunities to get into, it means that I am normal. And what is that? Mm-hmm. And because that idea comes from the world we live in. Or for some, it means that I have intimacy in my life, because that glass of wine with dinner is usually with a partner or with friends. So that's community. And we begin to talk about that. It also, one of the things that I didn't expect, but this has been it's been a really great revelation in working with people in this way now for a number of years. People who have really excessive relationships with any behavior or substance, they consider this future moderate relationship as non-consequential. I'm breaking down my body so much in the way that I do yoga that in the future, when I do yoga, it's just going to be simple. Or I drink so much now that a glass of wine is going to do nothing to me. But that's just actually not true. As most moderate drinkers know, a glass of wine does cause a level of intoxication that may not be welcome. And there's definitely a consequence to that the next day in terms of dry mouth or a certain fogginess or a lethargy that comes with just even a glass of wine for most people. But for the person that's drinking a fifth of Jack Daniels a day, they think of that as, oh my goodness, it's going to be nothing. And what I usually hear from that person down the line as they begin to explore is, I've become quite a lightweight. I couldn't believe how much that glass affected me. And I actually didn't like how I felt in the morning because I had something that I really enjoy doing during the day, or I take being responsible more seriously now because I like my life.
So one of the things you're doing in discussing the possibilities and setting the goal, having the client set the goal, is you're helping them to look at the possible metrics they could use to ascertain whether they're reaching that goal. Because having that drink of wine, now one question, the obvious one that comes immediately to mind is, well, the next day do you want two? But it also is, well, how does it make you feel? How does it fit your goal? Is it, in fact, a gateway to more sense of intimacy with your partner, or does your partner not reflect that back to you? All these kinds of questions.
Right. I've never heard of anybody in sort of I'll use the word I don't like, normal life, say that yes, the intimacy in our relationship hangs on that glass of wine. That's just not, there's no glass of wine that delivers intimacy. Certainly delivers an altered state of mind. And in that altered state of mind, you might have different dimensions in your relationship, and some you may like and some you may not like. In terms of the gateway story, I think it's really important to first make sure that the risk of what might happen is mitigated. When somebody has already come from a life's experience that's ended them up in what we just spoke of as addiction, it's not, in fact, it's not okay by me. The thing that's commonly said in today's treatment world that, to people that say, well, go ahead and experiment some more, and if you can moderate, that's great, but if not, come on back and we'll help you stop. Because that's what that's saying to somebody is go and hurt yourself on your own time. What we say is, well, if that's something you're going to do, if that's your goal, let's do that together. And how do we keep you safe? Because if it turns into a gateway, if you have a glass of wine today and tomorrow you want two, that's really important information. That tells us that what you thought of as that glass of wine isn't what actually happened. What we might have thought of as a resolution of difficulties, belonging, having purpose and worth and dignity and compassion and connection may not be quite there yet. And so we've got more work to do. And for some people, it's like, okay, well, I've tried it. It's not working. I hear this also quite a bit from clients who successfully begin to moderate with substances. And they come and say, I don't think I can do this. I remember vividly the first time that happened to me. My whole body tightened up. I thought, oh no, what happened? Did you get a DUI? Did you get what happened? Hospital? And he said, no, I'm fine. I just had my glass of wine and with my wife over dinner, which is what he had planned to do. But he says, we did this on Thursday. And from Monday to Thursday, all I could think about is what kind of wine, how big a glass, what's like okay and what's not okay. And I don't think that's what my wife is doing all week, is thinking about a glass of wine. So I think I'm just going to put it aside. It doesn't work for me. And that's a really powerful place to be. And I think a much more enduring place to be. Imagine the amount of insight and power there is in somebody arriving at a place like that on their own versus having been told, just don't go there. There's a switch that's flipped in your nervous system somewhere, and it can't be unflipped.
Which, of course, tends to be, particularly in the AA model, the Alcoholics Anonymous model, is, a drink, the drunk takes a drink, the drink takes a drink, the drink takes the drunk, a kind of model. And you're saying that for many people, the issue should not be looked at that way, but rather how much the preoccupation with the drinking might be interfering even.
That's one piece of it. And what is that preoccupation about? What is that telling us? What role is that serving? Just like the drinking, what role is that serving? And sort of, I'm a big fan of 12-step as a social support. I'm also a big fan of 12-step as a treatment center that says we are a 12-step treatment center, because people can select into that if some aspect of a spiritually oriented approach to life makes sense to people. We all select into different kinds of groups that make sense to us, and we try some and we walk in and we go, that's not so much for me.
My experience has been that you're not selecting one or another. I mean, I've had therapy clients who are in 12-step, and I have had therapy clients who couldn't tolerate 12-step. I found it too overbearing, too spiritual for them.
It makes sense to them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. One of the things, though, that you and I think, and 12-step have in common is that we don't say there can be no relapses. We know there can be.
I don't even like that word. That's not a relapse. It's a part of life. I don't relapse into sleep every night. I go to sleep. And for some, the use of, I don't relapse into Excedrin when I have a headache. For people who have struggle and who have a well-worn path in their nervous system and in their behaviors of when I have this particular kind of headache, that's the particular medicine that I use. But I'm trying not to do that anymore. Right?
Trying to find new and better medicines.
In my life. Yeah, I don't want that. But if the pain gets big enough, I may just go there. That's information for me.
And
that's
it doesn't make me evil, and it doesn't make me a loser. It makes me human.
It makes me as a human. I really like the way you said that. This is my human. The big thing there that I think is just important to spend time on is the potential for harm for somebody who has strayed away from that particular coping strategy and goes back to it. That's where the majority of overdoses and hospitalizations and DUIs, all of these things happen, partly because of what I even spoke about earlier. I'm used to drinking X amount of whatever, or I'm used to injecting X amount of heroin.
And now I'm going to shoot up the way I always did.
Right. I can cut that down to 10% of what I did, but that still might be a lethal dose for me because my perception isn't accurate to the actual drug's effects.
Because we build tolerances.
Absolutely.
Even going to the gym, for example, people working out, another addiction for people. And, they, just the other day, I was talking to a friend of mine who's now in his early 50s. I first met him when he was a teen. And he's at the gym and he's lifting way too much weight. And he says to me, but I always could do this when I was young, Ken.
That's right.
Yeah, you could when you were young and you went to the gym almost every day. And, you have to recognize change. And I think one of the roles of good therapy is to help people to understand how they are changing and have changed.
That's right. And have a deeper insight and mechanisms available to check in with themselves. How is this going? To have a community of people to support them in, okay, this is, I'm going into a scary place. I want to go there. I want to go back to the gym and bench press, 175 pounds. So, can you spot me, right? So that it doesn't crush my chest, right? This is the kind of stuff that we can access if we just begin to look at addiction differently.
And we'll be right back to talk a little bit more. Welcome back, folks, and we're talking about addiction and wellness and rehab and all those very important topics. And I was wondering, one of the things that I dealt with a lot as a therapist was the issue of who wanted people to have addictions. I studied family therapy early on, was a big proponent of R.D. Laing. And one of the things I very quickly learned in my work with people was that there were people who wanted clients to have addictions, often people who found it to their advantage in a way. And addendum, so you were talking about the support system, and I thought maybe we should spend a few minutes on the negative system. And I'll tell you a quick story of example. A woman I was working with was having her AA anniversary, and she had been sober, of course, obviously an anniversary. Well, it was, I believe, her second or third year, so she'd been sober for quite some time. And she announced this to her family, and her parents said, "Oh, we have to celebrate. That's wonderful." And she said, "Well, come to the anniversary meeting," and they did. And they said, "Let's go out to dinner." So they get to dinner, and the mother asks her, do you mind if we drink wine? If you don't want us to, we won't. And the young woman was secure enough in her sobriety at this point that she really, really didn't mind if somebody else was drinking around her. She had no need. She was perfectly happy with her Coke or whatever. So they're drinking, and of course, she notices that the mother is making a great amount of effort about this one. Oh, hey, this is really good wine. I mean, it was some kind of house wine. It wasn't, but oh, wow. Well, she doesn't bite, and oh, good, Mom, that's great. I'm glad you're enjoying it. What do you think of the chicken? Kind of thing. Well, so then they order dessert. And they're going around and ordering dessert, and Mom orders zuba inglés, which for those of you who may not know is a rum-flavored cake. And, good Italian restaurant, and this was a good Italian restaurant. It is loaded with real rum. And the mother says, you have to try it. And she holds out the fork with the zuba inglés to the door. And my client, who had talked to me before, and she said, I don't trust them. She says, I know they love me in their way, but I don't trust them. She said, she's telling me the next day about her experience. She called up and asked for a special. She said, I got up. She said, I love you. And I know you love me, but I don't think you love my sobriety. Mm-hmm. And she left.
Wow, how powerful.
How powerful indeed. But have you ever run into people like that?
Oh, yeah. So I love teenagers. It's my favorite population to work with. And I just want to give the most, I think, very important, maybe the most important disclaimer. I don't blame parents. Mm-hmm. I think that we're humans and we have wounds. And they're generational, and they're all of those things that we spoke about at the beginning, these mm-hmm. risk and resilience factors. And there are systems in place that are powerful systems, particularly in families. They're the most powerful, deeply entrenched systems. Mm-hmm. So the kind of thing that I've been met with, maybe I see it in a disproportionately high amount because I'm even looking for it. So I probably bring that to the table. But I often have young folks who come in, and their parents love them. They're sort of sacrificing everything, their finances, their time, and these kids begin to succeed. What is success? Well, success is to move away from this particular coping strategy and into the pain, and to look at it, to go, okay, well, what is it that makes me want to smoke pot all day long, or to take pills and to do these kinds of things that the parents are so scared about? And then we end up in sessions where the parents make comments like, if so-and-so is going to act like this, they might as well just smoke. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay? And this is that same kind of thing, but some might call that sabotage. I call it pain tolerance. It's important to work with families and people around, it's for you, Mom, who is used to having a glass of wine with dinner, and you don't recognize that, and it may not be a problem in your life. You're going to have to go through some version of your little bit of pain to not drink over dinner with your daughter, mm-hmm. right? But it often isn't even a suggestion to families that, hey, what do you think this is like for this other person? How do we help you tolerate your own stuff rather than always funneling it to this other person who in a way has been carrying the mantle for the family, that pain mantle? Okay, well, I'll take medicine for everybody. And I see that in adolescence. So your story reminded me of all of these times where I'm with families who are like, it's great that she isn't smoking pot and isn't in trouble at school for that, but she's in trouble every day with the teachers. Mm-hmm. She's now talking a lot, and she's jumping up and down and blah, blah, blah. And my response is, well, yeah, we're starting to see what it is. What was this person medicating to begin with? Mm-hmm. And then, of course, there's an adjustment period. We don't actually, in many cases, don't even know who's under all of it yet. because there is, physiological resettling and changes.
Psychological growing up, because generally speaking, when an addiction starts, growth stops. So if the kid's been drinking, say, since 7th grade, and now they're in like maybe 10th grade, they missed the middle school experience and what it would teach them about how to live better.
Well, they grew up in that particular way, right? They grew up with, okay, when stress happens, I attend to stress this way.
Yeah.
And now, 7 years later, and now stress still happens, maybe even more than ever, because you're welcoming it in a way. And you haven't necessarily worn new patterns, new grooves of, this is how I like to attend to my stress.
Now before we run out of time, I want to make sure our audience who are in Southern California know how to reach out to you if they need help. So tell us quickly about Evo and how to find Evo and how to find you.
Great. So yes, Evo Health and Wellness. Our website is evohw.com. All of our information is there. All calls, all emails for parents, people, caregivers, anybody, therapists who are curious, have a question. All of those calls come to me, and I offer a free hour of consultation to anybody in person or over the phone. Our approach is very different. We didn't, because this conversation felt so comfortable and natural, we didn't actually get to the 5 myths that
well, we talked about some of them indirectly.
Exactly, we can talk about that.
People can go online to your website and read some of this stuff, so we don't need it.
It's all there. We have an active social media. They can connect with us through Facebook, Evo Health and Wellness. We have a Twitter, Instagram. All of we're out there in the ways that people can find us. And
physically, where are you? Because people well, okay, I want to meet with this guy, but I live in here. So where are you physically?
We're in Venice Beach, California, right in the middle of the hubbub of Venice Beach. We have an outpatient treatment program that goes from 6 day a week, 3 to 5 hours, down to sort of 1 or 2 days or individual sessions over 6 or 12 months. But again, we have people fly in, and we have a 2 and a 4 week version of our program that we deliver to folks that are coming in from out of town, because we are unique in the way that we work. And so if what we do makes sense to people, we want to try to help. And that doesn't always mean enrolling. If it makes sense and we can, fantastic. Come on in.
Folks, I do have to make sure you understand, even though they're in Venice Beach, rollerblading is not part of the treatment, right?
Actually, we have a client from out of town who is here, and I'm going rollerblading with him tomorrow. So it actually is.
It can be.
I wouldn't call that part of the core treatment. But I like that particular one. I like to rollerblade. That he likes it, so we're going to go for it. So those kinds of connections are also available. But it's not. We don't have a rollerblading program.
But you do some pretty good work. And folks, if you're in that area or you can arrange to do it, to fly in for something, this is a program, Evo, EVO, and you can find them evohw.com. On the internet, and look them up. And Koorosh, I really want to thank you for joining me walking on the Weene Side.
Thanks, Kenneth. Thanks for having me on.
We're truly living in the United States of addiction. A shocking statistic reveals that up to 1 in 8 Americans suffer from alcoholism. It can destroy families, marriages, and it claims the lives of approximately 80,000 people every year in this country alone. And at just 24 years of age, our next guest, Mason, wonders if he could be next.
My name is Mason. I'm 24, and I think I'm going to die by 25. The first time I drank alcohol, I was 6 or 7 years old. The first time I got drunk, I was sitting in my mom's garage with a bottle of Jim Beam by myself in the dark. I started drinking regularly at the age of 17. I cannot remember the last time I did not have alcohol. I will drink until I pass out. I drink every single day. Every single day. If I have any money in my pocket, I will spend it on alcohol. Usually I get money through pawning items that I own.
I used to have a fridge right here, and I sold it so that I could get drunk. I'm sick of living in poverty. I mean, I've got graffiti and holes all over my walls. I don't even have a real ceiling. I'm gonna get back to drinking now.
Mason growing up was a lot of fun. We did a lot of things, riding around a go-kart and pretending it was a vehicle was a lot of fun for us. He was great until his parents got a divorce, and then he kind of fell off a little bit.
When I was around 12 years old, my mom had cheated on my dad, and my parents broke up. My mom eventually moved out of state completely. I was not close to my father at all. I was very, very close to my mother. It not only felt like she betrayed me, but it felt like she abandoned me. I felt nothing but pain, and that led to a lot of the problems that we have to this day.
He's just lost right now. I'm more worried that the alcoholism has damaged his insides. We were sitting outside in the chairs, and he got up to come inside, and as soon as he got in the back door here, he just hit the ground. He was like, I'm gonna puke. So I grabbed the bucket that was right there, and he puked into this bucket for a good 10 minutes, and it was just solid red.
My name is Mason. I am 24 years old. I've been using drugs and alcohol since I was 13, and I have nothing but shame and pain to show for it. I have nowhere else to turn. Please help me. I don't know what else to do. I want to get better.
Please welcome Mason and his stepsister, Sarah. Mason, I first want to applaud you. I applaud you for reaching out to us for help.
Thank you.
Did you ever think when you wrote that letter that it would get answered?
I never thought I would even receive a reply. Honestly, I was watching an episode about a girl who was struggling with heroin addiction and an eating disorder, and it was like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was drinking, and she was really super strong and facing her demons, and she was willing to reach out and ask for help, and I figured if she can do it, then so can I.
Now I can see how much pain, obviously, this has caused you and your family, and I have to also applaud your stepsister, Sarah, because the love that you have for your stepbrother is remarkable through all this.
It's heartbreaking to watch such a talented, smart young man have so many dreams and aspirations and then just lose them. And alcohol, it's heartbreaking and a helpless feeling, you know? What can you do? It's hard. It feels like you mourn who somebody was and you're just kind of accepting how it is now. And it's not a good feeling.
I want to allude to something you said. You don't think you make it to your 25th birthday?
No, when I was a child, my mother had a dream that I would die before I was 25.
Well, you know you can change dreams, right?
Yeah.
Dreams like that, right?
Yeah.
I can tell that you have a great heart.
Yes.
He does. He has a big heart.
Absolutely right. When I met with Mason, it was so clear to me what a smart young man this is. He's so talented, so sweet, has such a big heart for people in his family and his loved ones. And he is rightfully scared for his life because he doesn't know how to stop these patterns that have occurred over many, many years and gotten worse. And really, the beginning of this, and for many people who are addicted, is not really the addiction itself. It's always there's a precursor. There is depression. There's some other stressful experience.